Websites with clean loading screens or really smooth animations seem to be a lot more professional. And if you stick around, I'll show you how you can make your very own loading screen that'll make your website look much more professional. So thank you for joining me today. This is Zach with Zach OS Tech, and today we'll be looking at how to make a loading screen that'll generate different quotes. Let's get started. So here I am in VS Code. I don't have anything written for you right now because this is going to be a pretty quick tutorial and we're just gonna write everything from scratch. So let's start with the HTML file. Let's do the exclamation point, and then with the Emmet abbreviation, we can hit enter. And then for document, let's do random quote. And then now we're at the body. So here we really just want the quote, the name of the author of the quote, and a button so they can continue. So let's make a div of class quote. In the div, we'll have a paragraph with quote text, another paragraph of quote author. And if you notice, I'm just typing like P dot is the Emmet abbreviation for creating a class. So you could do div dot container and then tab, and it creates that for you. It's just a little shorthand that will speed up development. And then the last thing we wanted was a button with a class of, let's just do button for right now. Type equals submit, class equals nothing. Okay, that is about it. So let's look and see what we got so far. Let's put some dummy text in here. Okay, loading quote, loading author, continue. And then that will allow us to move on from the loading screen to the page. That's all we need for this. That's it. All right, let's go to the CSS file. And we'll start out by doing HTML, margin 0, padding 0. That's it. And then we'll want to style the body. So let's do display flex, height 100, view height, justify content center, and align content center, or align items center. Let's do a background color of white smoke. It's a little off-white color that looks pretty good. And then font family. What do we want to make our font? For this, I'm actually going to open up Google and go to Google Fonts. And here I'm going to switch the category to, I want one that looks like handwriting. So I like this one, Architect's Daughter. Okay, that's pretty good. Select the style. All right, and now I want a different one for the author name. I'm gonna do caveat. Okay, and then I'm going to select the semi-bold of this one. So what Google Fonts is really nice about is it gives you the link to put in your HTML and then how to reference these CSS variables right here. All right, so the last thing that we're going to put in our HTML is this link. So let's take that and go back to index.html and we'll put it right under where the title is. Paste, and then I hit save and it reformatted my text. And then in order for this HTML file to be able to read the CSS, we're going to do a link and then use the Emmet abbreviation for the CSS. Mine's named style.css, so I don't have to do anything else. And then for the JavaScript, I'm going to put it right here at the last line of the body, script source app.js, and that's it. Okay, so if we go back to here, so this is how we reference Architect's Daughter. All right, and then we'll go back there for the other font that we need. Okay, let's style the quote container right now. So we're going to also do a display flex, flex direction column. We're going to align items center and justify content flex end. And that's going to make everything go to the bottom of this card. Let's do a padding of 40 pixels, a width of 80%, so that it gives it a little space on the left and right. And then let's do a height of, say, 40%. Border radius 20 pixels. Background color of white. Okay, so it's pushing everything all the way down here to the very bottom. And then you could either choose to leave the different color of the card, or you can change it to where it shows the same as the background. Okay, let's do the text. So the actual quote part. Quote, text, color. Okay, let's do 2 rem for this font size. Text align center. And then I'm going to do Architect's Daughter or the quote, just to make sure that if that body font up here gets changed, it'll still have the same font for the quote. All right, and then let's do quote author. Let's do a gray color for the author. Text align center. Do a font size of 1.5 rems. Font family. Let's do the caveat for this font family. Okay, so all right, let's look at what that looks like. Okay, so we're getting there. It would be nice if we had quotes in here that we can actually look at. So let's actually take a look at doing that right now and getting that data. So we're actually going to use an API called type.fit. And if we go up here and go to type.fit/API/quotes, it'll give us hundreds of different quotes with the text and the author who said them. So we're going to use something called fetch to send an HTTP request to get back a quote from this. So let's jump over to our JavaScript file and let's just declare a couple variables ahead of time. So let's do let quote equal document.querySelector quote. And this is selecting the quote container. And then let text equal document.querySelector. And this was quote __ text. Let author equal document query selector quote author. And then the last thing is let button. Let button equal document.querySelector. Okay. And now we can make a function of get quote. And here's where we're going to do the fetch request. So we'll do fetch and then we'll pass in that API URL. And if we're just getting data back, then that's all we really have to do there. And what this does is it returns a promise. So we have to type in then. And what a promise basically is it doesn't give you the data back immediately. It just promises that it will return some data in the future. And so if we were to just continue with the code, it would fail and say that it was undefined or there's not a value there. So we have to wait for it to actually return us the value and then do something with that value. So we'll do the response and then we'll do an arrow function. And if we were just to console log this, okay, let's look at the console real quick on here. Missing parentheses after. Okay, let's look at what that's. There we go. Okay, so this returned just a status 200 and OK is equal to true. So this actually did have a connection and it will return something. So in order to get the value that we're actually wanting, we have to go back here. And then for this response, we have to parse the JSON that's coming to us. So we'll do response.json, just like that. And then we have to do another then. And this time we'll use the data. Okay, console log data. And if you're using a formatter like Prettier, it'll format it like this and it looks a lot better. Okay, so now it returns all 16,043 quotes. So that's not what we're looking for, but at least we know that it's actually returning the data that we're looking for. Now we just have to specify what index value in this array that we want, and then we can load that into here. So let's do that right now. So instead of console logging, what we can do is actually create an index value and set it equal to math.random. And what math.random does is it picks a random value between 0 and 1. And so if we actually do math.random times 1643, that will, if it returns 1 times 1643 is 1643, or 0, it'll return 0. So it's a way of getting any value in that range, but that could return a decimal value, which is what we don't want. So if we do math.round in front of this, it'll round it to the nearest whole number. So now if we do console log data, pass in the index.text and go back here, we got this random text. And if we refresh it, it's going to give us a different quote every single time. All right. So now let's do that with the author. All right. And now we get in here who the actual author of this quote is. So instead of console logging this, we could just take this value right there, do a text inner HTML equals just like that. Let's do the same thing with author. Author.inner HTML equals data.author. Data index.author. And there we go. Now it actually loads the quote and the author underneath it. So let's go back to our style.css here. And now I want to style the button a little bit more. So let's do button width equals 40%. Margin equals 35 pixels. Let's do a padding of 10 pixels. A border radius of 10 pixels. Let's do display flex. Justify content center. font size of large, color gray, and border none. Okay, so let's see what this looks like here. All right, so it's kind of grayed out a little bit, but that's what we want right now because I'm going to have a different value for when the button is active, and then we can toggle whether this is clickable. So instead of just flashing this quote and then immediately going onto the page, if the page loads, what we do instead is we pop up the quote and then highlight this button when everything on the page is loaded. And then that allows the user of the website to be able to finish reading the quote before they continue. Because if they get halfway through your quote and you cut them off and you just make them go onto the page, it's going to get frustrating for them, especially if they were in the middle of reading that quote and they really liked it. So let's do button.active. We'll set an active class on this one. So we'll set the color to white and the background color to dark slate blue. And then we can do a button active hover. Let's do dark slate blue. And then here we can drag this up just a little bit. Let's switch this to active just to see what that looks like. What did I do wrong? Gotta save the style. There we go. Okay. So now that's clearly evident that you can click that button, but we don't want that to be active right now. Instead, we're going to set it to active in the JavaScript. And so if you go back to your JavaScript file, still inside the get quote function, let's do a set timeout. And usually I don't remember the syntax for this perfectly, so I go to this snippet and then that does that for me. So I'm going to set the timeout duration to 3000 milliseconds. And then inside the set timeout function, I'm going to do button class list add active. Okay. And then hit save and go back here. And after 3 seconds, then this continue button will light up and it'll be clickable. So that kind of resembles if there was something loading in the background and now it's done loading. So this gives you the same type of experience as what that would be like. Okay, and for this example, I want when we hit continue just to reload and refresh the quote that's on the page. So to do that, I'm going to create a new function down here called new quote. We're going to pass it in an event, and instead of putting the event listener on the button, we're going to put it on quote. And I'll tell you why in just a second. So this is something called event delegation. And instead of putting the event listener directly on an element, we put it on a parent element and then listen for the target of what was clicked on. So in this case, we're going to do quote. So now anywhere I click in here, we'll fire this function. And inside the function, we'll say if you clicked on the button, then do what we want to do. Otherwise, then just disregard what we're clicking on. And what that allows us to do is we could completely remove this button or add more buttons, and it'll still allow us to have that event listener on every button inside the quote container. So if we do console log, let's log what E does, then go back here. Okay, so this is just the location of our click, and what we're looking for is here, this target. So if we do e.target and go back, okay, we're clicking on the quote. That time we clicked on button submit. So in here, instead of doing console log, let's do if e.target matches button active. So if what you clicked on does not match button with a class of active, then just return. Don't do anything. e.target. Okay, let's test this out. Nothing's loading. Boom. Okay, so now instead of console log, whatever we put here is going to fire whenever the button is clicked. So here we're going to call the get quote function, and then let's do button.classList remove active. Okay, wait 3 seconds, click it, it refreshes the quote, and then now we can just keep clicking this. The last thing I want to look at is how this looks on mobile, because if we looked on this on a phone, it would be way off the screen, and that's not good. That's not good design. And so I have an application called Responsively. I can put a link to that in the description, but if we go here, it will actually show us what these things look like on a mobile device, on a computer, and on a tablet all in one screen, so that we can edit for responsive design really, really easily. So let's actually go back to style.css. And instead of font size here, what we can do is do something called a clamp function on these. So let's do clamp, and then, so this takes 3 variables. One is the minimum value, one is the maximum value, and one is the variable of the viewport width. that it'll increase by. So let's do 1 rem, 2 viewport width, and 2 rem is our maximum because this is what we wanted on the desktop. And then for here, this is what we had on desktop, which is fine, but we'll do clamp, 1 rem, 2 viewport width, and then 1.5. Let's go back to responsively. These look a little small. So here, what if we... Okay, I like 1.3, and then here, actually that might be a little bit too big. Okay, that's better. That's the author, and then here, let's do 1.3 for that. Okay, so it'll go from 1.3 up to 2 rems, and this will go from 1.1 up to 1.5 rems. All right, the last thing I forgot was to add a hyphen right here, so that it puts a hyphen in front of who said the quote. All right. So that's about it today. Thank you for joining me. I hope you found this useful, and I really hope you're able to implement this in your website because I think it'll make it look a lot more professional and polished. If you have any suggestions for future videos, please leave those in the comments below, and please leave a link to your project that you used this in. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.